Welcome to session 6 of Transformed. We have been talking about all kinds of things that are impactful for our life. Week 1, we talked about our overall spiritual health. Week 2, we talked about our physical health. Week 3, we talked about our mental health. Week 4, we talked about emotional health. Last week, we talked about our relational health. Well, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about financial health. We're going to talk about money. Money, the thing that makes the world go round. Money, the thing that we all wish we had more of. Money, that thing that causes more problems than anything. In fact, the scriptures teach us that money is the root of all evil. Money in and of itself is not evil, but the love of money is the root of all evil. Money, that thing that causes more divorces than anything. Money. Money. Money keeps people in dead-end careers. Keeps us unhappy at work because we can't quit the job to pursue what we really want because we need money. How can I be financially healthy? It's a big topic, and so let's dive in and see if we can talk about some things that can help us, and then that'll maybe spur some conversation that you can talk in your small group. So glad that you're hanging in there. So we're at week 6, and we've had lots of devotionals and lots of sermons and lots of small group time talking about these things. And congratulations for staying in there. And so we got 2 more weeks, and I know that you can do it. So how do I transform my financial health? We're going to look at 7 habits today of being financial healthy. And the first one is this: I must trust God as my source and supplier. I must trust God as my source and supplier. This is huge. This is as big as 1 + 1 is 2. You cannot go anywhere in math if you don't understand that 1 + 1 is 2. And you can't get anywhere close to having the right perspective towards money, to being financially healthy, if you don't understand that God is the source. God is the source and the supplier of everything that you need. And I must. In fact, the 7 statements that we're going to look at all begin with I must. I must trust. When it comes to money, it is all about trust. When it comes to money and God, you put money and God in the same sentence. You have to put trust in there as well. This is what Romans 11:36 says. Everything comes from God and exists by His power and is intended for His glory. Everything that there is. Deuteronomy 8:18 says this: Remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth. The wealth that you have, the job that you have, the resources that you have, the comforts that you have, the car that you drive, the house that you live in, the food that you had for dinner, what you ate for lunch today, all of those things that you have because you have money, God has produced those things, and He's the Lord of all of those things, and we have to keep that in mind. If I can get to the point in my life when I can remember and always remember that God is my source and my supplier. So if God, the creator of the universe, is my source and supplier of all my needs, then I shouldn't have to be worried about money. But I do have to be smart with it. I do have to be healthy with it. So it leads us to number 2. I must keep good records. I must keep good records. Well, that seems pretty simple. It is pretty simple, yet most of us don't do it. If I were to ask you how much money have you spent on Starbucks in the last 30 days, you probably have no idea. If I were to ask you how much money you spent on entertainment in the last 30 days, you probably have no idea. If I ask you how much money you've spent in the last 30 days on eating out, you probably have no idea. Now, you know what your house payment is probably. Maybe not. Maybe if your spouse does it, you may not even know that. Car payment, you probably know your car payment. If you have any other debt that you have to pay on a monthly basis, you might know. But the rest of it, you probably have no idea. That's the way most of us live. So if I'm going to even begin the process of being healthy in my finances, I've got to get to the place where I keep good records. Proverbs 27:23. Riches can disappear fast, so watch your business interests closely. Know the state of your flocks and your herds. So we've got to keep good records. And if we don't do that, we're not ever going to get to the point where we are financially healthy. Most of us are afraid to do it. We're afraid to keep records. We're afraid to really delve in. They say that most people don't balance their checkbook, not because they don't know how, but most people won't balance their checkbook or their checking accounts because they're afraid of what they'll find. They're afraid that there's more going out than coming in. So it scares us, but we need to keep good records. We need to know what we're doing. When somebody comes to me for a financial counseling, which is rare because I'm not a financial advisor, I'm not a financial counselor in any way. But here's what I do know when it comes to financing and keeping records. This is what I'll tell people to do. I say, what I need you to do for the next 30 days, I want you to write down every dime that you spend. When you get a Starbucks, write it down. When you buy a pack of gum, write it down. When you get gas, write it down. You write down everything that you spend for those 30 days. And at the end of those 30 days, I want you to bring that in, and then we're going to go through it. They never come back. People aren't willing to do it. We're not willing to keep records. If I want to be healthy financially, I got to understand it all comes from God. Number 2, I got to keep good records. Number 3, I must give the first 10% back to God. So here we are, that tithing thing. We mentioned that the first week, and hopefully that didn't scare you off. Obviously, if you're watching this, it didn't scare you off, and you're still going to small group. But I must give the first 10% back to God. And here's an important thing to understand about this tithe, and it's the statement under it. The purpose of tithing is to teach you always to put God first in your lives. The purpose of tithing is to teach you always to put God first in your lives. I said it before, I'll say it again. Anthem Community Church doesn't need your money. God certainly doesn't need your money. But what you need is a proper understanding of money and trust in God. And one of the ways that God has laid it out is this, is that He said, you get to keep 90%, I want 10%. And if we all come together with 10%, I say this all the time, I wonder what would happen to a local church if everybody who attended their church was obedient in the matter of tithing. That would cause an enormous problem. Do you know that if all the Christians in the world tithed, that poverty in the world would be eradicated? God has set this up for a reason. And the average person in the average church is incredibly disobedient in this area. It's always easier to think somebody else is going to do it. It's always easy to think the church has enough money. Or some people are just ignorant in the fact that they think that the church doesn't have to spend any money, like the rent for the school is free, or the pastors don't want to live inside, or all of the resources that we use in the children's ministry that Target gives us all those things. And yeah, it's silly sometimes what we think. But here's the bottom line. God says for you, if you're going to be a follower of Jesus, if you're going to be a follower of Him, if you're going to trust in Him, then I must give the first 10% back to God. The thing that really helps me in this idea of tithing is I heard this from Ed Young Jr., pastor's church in Dallas, Texas. And this is what he said. He said, I would rather live off 90% that God blesses than 100% He doesn't. And ever since I've heard that, I have never struggled in writing a tithe check, because I would rather God to bless the 90% He allows me to use, however I choose to use it, than 100% He doesn't bless. And here's the other thing I would say about tithing. If you're part of a local church and it's benefiting you, and your children are being benefited, and your teenagers are being benefited, and you're using the resources, and you call a pastor when you need them, and you're not giving to the church, you're not bringing your whole tithe to the church, then you're stealing. You're stealing. And it is that simple. So you got to get that straight. You got to get it straight. If I'm going to be financially healthy, I got to understand everything comes from God. I got to understand I got to keep good records. I got to give first 10% to God. The next one, the fourth one is this: I must save and invest for the future. I must save and invest for the future. Proverbs 21:20 says this: the wise man saves for the future, and a foolish man spends whatever he gets. What's a wise man do? He saves for the future. What does a foolish man do? He spends it as soon as he gets it. Proverbs 13:11, money that comes easily disappears quickly, but money that is gathered little by little, money that is gathered little by little will grow. Proverbs 24:27, develop your business first before building your house. Now, that's kind of tough, isn't it? But that's what we have to do. You got to get a job before you buy a house. So you got to establish that. A lot of people live off of the thing called the 80-10-10 principle. And the 80-10-10 principle is basically this: you live off of 80% of what you make, you save 10%, and you tithe 10%. I've heard it said this way. I've also heard it as the 70-10-10-10 principle. And that is, you live off of 70% of what you make, you save 10% short term, then you do 10% long term saving, and then you tithe 10%. But here's the deal: regardless if you're going to do the 80-10-10 or the 70, or you're just going to do 90-10 and you're going to live off 90% and tithe 10%, what you got to do is you got to make sure that you're living within your means. And Dave Ramsey says it like this: you need to act your wage. Act your wage. Financial security is pretty simple, and this is the depth that I have of it. Spend less than you make. Pretty simple. Spend less than you make. But I must save and I must invest for the future. The fifth one is this: I must set up a repayment plan to get myself out of debt. Debt will get you nowhere. You can't begin to be healthy financially if you're in debt. So set up some kind of payment to get out of it. Proverbs 3:27, don't withhold repayment of your debts. In other words, if you have debts, pay them. It's don't file bankruptcy and then just start the whole process again. That is not of God. You need to pay off your debts. Let no debt remain outstanding. Romans 13, verse 8. When you're paying off your debts, the simplest thing to do and the wisest thing to do is start with the smallest first. Don't start with the largest, because it'll take you forever to get it paid off. You need some victories, so start small. Make sure, another just real simple thing is, if you can't pay cash for it, don't get it. And so it's just important. But when we develop that debt, we got to try to get out of it as soon as possible. So if I'm going to be healthy financially, it all comes from God. I got to keep good records, so that gives me an idea of where I'm at. I need to tithe. I need to save and invest for the future. I need to get out of debt as soon and as quick as I can. And then the next one is this: I must budget my spending. Like I said, most of us have no idea how much we spend on certain things. We need to have a budget. Psalms 21:20. Stupid people spend their money as fast as they get it. That's stupid people spend money as fast as they get it. I must budget my spending. That obviously takes an enormous amount of discipline. Now here's the last one. The last one, number 7, which is I think is pretty profound. I must enjoy what I have. I must enjoy what I have. One of the main reasons a lot of people get in a tremendous amount of financial difficulty is because you're not content. And you think the new thing, whatever the new thing is going to make you happy. You think a bigger house is going to make you happy. You think a new car is going to make you happy. You think the new outfit's going to make you happy. It's just not true. Learn to enjoy what you have. Lisa and I used to play this game when we bought our first little starter home, and we'd go over to a friend's house, or we'd be invited over and we'd go to their house, and they'd be in these massive houses with the swimming pools and all this kind of stuff, and we'd just be in awe at all the stuff that they have. And then we'd get back in my little Honda Civic, and then we would drive back to our house, and their little simple house, and we would pull up in the driveway, and we would do this thing that we'd go back and forth, and Leaf would say, "Woo, I wonder who lives in this house with the green shutters with the carport. I've always wanted a carport. Who needs a garage when you can have a carport? And we would do those kinds of things to help us be reminded that we might not be living in the best house in the city that we live in, but we were living in a house that was safe and clean and comfortable, and we should be thankful for that. Learning how to enjoy what you have, immensely important. Some scripture there, 1 Timothy says, godliness with contentment is great gain. Ecclesiastes 6:9, it's better to be satisfied with what you have than to be always wanting something else. Hebrews 13:5, keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have. For God has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Now, being content for what you have is so incredibly hard to do because every commercial, every ad you've ever seen, print, television, or otherwise, is trying to convince you that you're not happy with what you have. And that's why it's such a hard thing to deal with. But we've got to do it. We've got to learn and put those kinds of things into place to be content with what we have. Last statement there in this is if you have to decide if you're going to trust God or yourself with your finances. Are you going to do it your way or are you going to do it God's way? It kind of goes back to that. Do I want to live off 90% God blesses or 100% He does? That He doesn't. Money is so important. It's something that we've got to get our minds around and our hearts around so that we can operate it from a healthy standpoint. Remember, Jesus talked about money more than He talked about heaven and hell combined. Money causes more divorces than anything. We have to have the right attitude about money. And it starts with everything I've got, everything I'll ever have comes from God. God knows what I need. He knows everything that I need, and He's not going to leave me hanging. And I've got to trust Him in that. So I hope you have some good conversations about this. Should be fun as you talk about money in small group. And we got some discovery questions there that you'll be able to talk through. And then in this coming week, hang in there, do those devotionals. Remember, if you miss, it's okay. Maybe you didn't do a 1 last week. Okay, just make this week different. Get back in there reading those devotionals. We hope to see you on Sunday. And we'll continue to gather in small groups and on Sunday as a local church as we're all trying to help each other live the truth of Jesus in everyday life.